India, the winning party has never even had 50% of the vote share. And so that's when we talk about a mandate in India, it's a very different definition of a mandate than in the US. And what that means when you come to power is also very different, I think. So that's one thing that I was quite surprised by. Another one for this current moment, of course, is that the opposition in India, while they've gained some steam in this election, it's turning out to be a bit more interesting than maybe we thought it was when it started. The opposition, for the most part, has been flailing. It hasn't felt like a close fight in a long time. Whereas in the US, you do feel like there's some sort of competition happening. And I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that Modi is a far more strategic and forward-thinking politician than Trump is. And so you still have this question in the US, right? Is it a fluke? Like, is this actually America, or is it just happened once? I mean, we'll find out. But in India, it's not a question. It's not a question of it happened once. Like, it is a strong DNA part of India, and it's changed politics in India forever. One thing that if I were to put Indian politics very crudely, and this is very crude because it does not keep into mind all the dimensions within regions, et cetera, but there's a strong, it's a fight between identifying with your caste versus identifying with your religion. So what Modi has done has convinced a bunch of people of a bunch of different castes to believe in their Hindu-ness over their caste identity. And the other side trying to remind them that, no, you're this caste, vote for us. And so it's interesting that, the phrase identity politics in the US is much newer, but India's always had this as identity politics. And it's always been about identity, and they haven't shied away from that. The other part is, I guess, where in India you have issues right now of a level playing field. And in the US, you have this idea of like distrust over the results. And like some people have said that shows that India's elections are so much stronger that you don't have that distrust. While you have some criticism of the electronic voting machines that India uses, overall, there's quite a fair general trust in the electoral pillar of democracy, while other pillars of democracy might be fraying. For the most part, the elections are the one thing that India has to claim strongly it's a democracy. But in terms of the other institutions, I would say Modi has done much more damage to other institutions than Trump has been able to. The final one I would say is on turnout. So the best sort of turnouts in the US are usually India's like average, or sometimes their worst, like slightly worse turnout, I would say. And with turnout also, the BJP is banking on a higher turnout, hoping for a higher turnout, but they haven't gotten that. So they're sort of worried about issues of complacency because everyone sort of feels like, oh, we know who's going to win anyway. In the US, obviously, that's not the case. We don't really know who's going to win. But Biden, the Democrats are worried that young Democrats and people of color might not come out to vote, and that it was the high turnout in the last election that got him to power. And the other interesting thing about turnout and like who votes in India, who finds dignity in a vote, has always just been so interesting to me. It's really the poor and those in the rural areas in India that have always had high turnout. And the mobilization around an election in terms of I'll give you, when I was in Bhopal, I mean, we are dealing with lower turnout than usual in India, but bear in mind that's still mid-60s. I was in Bhopal and I was just asking before the election, are you voting? Are you voting? Are you voting? Everyone not only said, yes, I'm voting. They're like, why is that even a question? Like, of course we're voting.
Yes.
And I don't even know if they will vote or not. I'm not so sure, but nobody could possibly say I'm not voting because it would be so shameful in India. There's so much dignity around the vote and they care about the vote so much. And I've always thought that's interesting. But the other way to look at that is that the one time that the country and the country's powerful care about the poor is when they have to vote. And so the poor also know that this is my one time when I have a say, when I can make a difference, where I can have a voice. And so I do think that that's you don't see that similar enthusiasm or gratefulness for a vote, I would say, which is an interesting.
No, I remember I told someone in Delhi what our turnout is, and they were just disgusted. They were like, "That is terrible." I said, "Yes,
it is terrible. It is terrible."
It's like, "Yep, you're right."